Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest running hiking podcast, downloaded over 1.2 million times worldwide and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage, coming to you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country.
In today's episode 318, brought to you by Keen Footwear, we talk about fun and hiking. We hope you enjoy. If you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the Support Us page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. I follow a number of US-based hiking podcasts and blogs, and one of the things that appears unique to the US as opposed to anywhere else in the world is the discussion on fun. It's not that we don't have fun in Australia, but for some reason we just don't seem to discuss it in the same way, and we definitely don't label it, but should we? Everyone has their own definition of fun, and I'm sure you've all been in situations where you've listened to friends and family describing their latest adventure or outing, and think to yourself, that's boring, or are you serious? My idea of fun varies, but will often fall into the latter category. So if we're going to measure fun, what are the accepted categories and what do they mean? Now, when I say accepted categories, it tends to be a US-based concept of fun.
Because you've got to label and categorise everything.
We do, yeah. And it's not something I ever really heard about until I started. As I said, it's really, you hear it in discussion in American blogs and podcasts, but you never really hear about it anywhere else. So these, I suppose, are arbitrary sort of categories. And as I said, a lot of people will have different views about what is fun and what isn't.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because I think sometimes it's in the moment and and at other times, and I guess we'll get to that, it's about what you're thinking about later, but we probably don't go, we're going to have fun today, and then go looking for the activity where we're going to have fun.
So the first category is type 1 fun. And type 1 fun is fun while you are doing it. And an example might be going for a short walk with family and friends, playing with kids or going to the movies. And this type of fun is pretty obvious because you feel it's apparent while you are doing the activity. In other words, you don't have to think about it. It just is. For most of us, we do an activity because we like doing it for whatever reason. It might be that we like going out and taking photographs, we like being in nature. We just like spending the time with family and friends. But we each have our why about why we do these things. And again, type 1 fun is very obvious about what it is. Moving on up the categories is type 2 fun. Now, type 2 fun is fun in retrospect, but not while you're doing it. Now, if you can think back, have you ever had one of those trips where you really didn't want to be there? You may even be miserable at the time.
Yes.
And once you get back home and you've had a little bit of time and distance from the activity, you have a chance to think back and realize you've learned something about yourself. And in hindsight, it was a kind of enjoyable. And I'll use as an examples here, hiking in extended periods of rain. I obviously don't want to have a 20-day trip where it's pouring with rain for all 20 days, but there is a saying, there's no rainbows without rain, and certainly I do enjoy hiking in the rain, and while I do want a bit of mix of rain and sun, not something I'm thinking, geez, I'm having a really good time while it's pouring with rain, but you finish your trip, you get over it, and you think, yeah, that was a really good trip.
It's interesting because for me, if we're thinking about a short morning hike or a day hike, I don't want to go out when it's raining, but when I'm out and it happens to rain, I don't actually mind it that much. But I would never make the decision that I'm going to deliberately go out in the rain.
So apart from, as I said, talking about hiking in the rain, things like walking on narrow trails next to a high drop-off or walking along the coastline when big waves are coming in. So, yeah, you might be thinking at the time, oh, look, this is not enjoyable, or you're just so focused on not falling off your path and falling over the cliff. You're just focused on staying safe. You're not thinking about whether you're enjoying it or not. It's one of those sort of things that, again, this is very much a subjective thing. You either like it or you don't. But certainly most of us can relate back to having come back from a trip and saying, yep, that was really good, but you need that distance between the activity itself and actually thinking about it.
I do actually enjoy walking along the top of a cliff edge. So I enjoy it. I think it's because of the views. Is it fun? Kind of fun. I'm a bit weird that way.
Another example from my perspective is we walked in Bungonia National Park a few years ago. There's a number of walks, and the walks are named after colours. So there's one track in particular, the red track. It's the sort of thing you're so focused on getting through this canyon over these large boulders and working your way around, you're too focused on thinking about getting through this thing safely. And afterwards you think, yep, that was a really good achievement. Glad I did it. But you're not sort of thinking about that at the time.
No. The clambering over those big boulders that were very large was hard work, but it was also kind of fun and playful.
If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you'll know that I'm obsessed with hiking footwear, driven by the difficulty in finding that perfect fit for my size 15 feet. While Jill's feet fit within the size norm for female hikers, she also has wide feet, and this is where Keen footwear comes in. Keen footwear has been around for many years, with the Taji model providing the backbone to an ever-expanding range. The current Taji 4 model was voted one of Time's best inventions of 2024 and sets a new standard in performance and sustainability through its robust, eco-friendly construction. Taji has a boot or shoe option for just about every outdoor adventurer, including those with bigger feet, providing a supreme level of stability and protection against the environment and giving you the confidence to go wherever the trail takes you. If you haven't considered Keen footwear as a hiking option, maybe it's time that you did. Now on to our third category, Type 3 fun. And this is where you've pushed the boundaries of comfort and safety just that little bit too much. It's not fun when you're doing it, and typically it's not fun when you think back at it from a safety perspective of home months later. Now, fun is not the way you would describe whatever activity it was you did in any way, shape or form. A good example here might be someone with a fear of heights going skydiving or standing on the edge of the cliff. Typically, you're not going to think it's fun while it's happening, and the last thing you want to do is be there, and you really don't want to be thinking about it later down the track.
It's an interesting one because I think some of these kind of fun categories are a little bit more about achievement and accomplishment and the courage to do something that's a little bit different.
Now, the other good example of Type 3 fun, Jill and I did a mountaineering course in around about 2016, I think it was. And this was in Switzerland, and we wanted to, just do something different, hiking in the snow, hiking in the alpine areas and to the extreme. And we were quite happy walking over snow areas. One of the things from my perspective is we were walking down a glacier, we had crampons on, and were coming off the nose of the glacier, and this was it was almost like walking on glass. It was just this translucent, shiny glass-like ice. You could see down to the ground, sort of 3 meters below. It curved off the front. And from my perspective, it's one of the few times in my life I can say, yes, I've been really scared. And it wasn't, if I had fallen, it wasn't going to be a major issue. I would have slid down and maybe bruised myself.
Landed somewhere.
Yeah. But it was more about I had these crampons, these sharp, spiky crampons on my feet, and all I could think about is I'm going to slash my legs open on the way down. So again, I came away from that trip thinking, I'm glad I did it, but I would definitely not class it as fun. Jill, I don't know whether she thought it was the same thing or not, or
it didn't worry me too much until I found a hole and my leg disappeared, and then the guide was trying to dig my leg out and had his ice pick and cut my favourite hiking pants. It's a first world problem. But no, I think for me again that was more about accomplishment and the climbing up an ice wall or abseiling down the glacier a short distance. In that sense, it wasn't a huge challenge. But most of those things I thought of in terms of accomplishment, as I said, but didn't really quite get the fear that Tim and probably didn't notice that Tim was that fearful. I thought he was a bit weird at the moment, but it wasn't until later that I found out that he thought he was going to stab himself with his own crampons.
And again, going away from a hiking example, again, we have both done skydiving in the past, and it was this was tandem diving, so I was strapped to an experienced instructor. But all I could think of was jumping out of a plane. That didn't worry me, but I was just thinking, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. I wasn't really enjoying the experience. I was just there. And again, it was just something that I don't really have a fear of heights as such, but it just didn't do anything for me. So yeah, never going to be a skydiver.
And again, I loved it. I thought that was fun.
Okay, so I think that from my perspective, I love doing multi-week hikes that are hundreds of kilometres long. And from my perspective, I think that is fun. I enjoy it.
That's not fun.
And partly for me, it's a chance to go into my own head and to think and just to go into autopilot, which is something I do. And it is a real luxury. It really is. Whereas other people, most hikers or most people are herd animals. They like being around other people. I'm quite happy being around other people, but I'm also happy being on my own. So it is interesting. The concept of fun very much is a subjective thing. So one person's idea of fun isn't necessarily another person's idea of fun. So I think that really what it comes down to is don't be afraid to push the boundaries within reason and use this as a learning experience. And finally, as the saying goes, hike your own hike.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, I think that's really important because it is a very personal thing. And I'm always a bit suspicious when, someone announces we're going to have fun today, because the answer for me is always, well, that depends. That depends how it goes, what we'll be doing, and how I feel about it.
Okay, we hope you've enjoyed this short episode of fun and hiking. And again, have a think about your experiences in the past about when you've gone hiking or done some other outdoor activity which your friends might have thought of fun or you might have thought of fun, but the other people in your group may not have. Very much a personal experience and one that very much is you're not going to get a set answer to. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, brought to you by Keen Footwear. That's all for me. Bye for now.
And bye from me.